All right, so we've just about finished with the code for our second view controller. So we're going to move over to the first view controller and put that code in. You may or may not have realized it, but there is more code in the first view controller. I'd say with all the blank spaces and everything, there's somewhere around 30 lines of code. All right. So I'm going to bring that one up. So I want to make sure that my first one is the one that's highlighted here. I'm going to click on this. All right, so it's highlighted, and that changed it over here to my first view controller. However you want to do that, because there's multiple ways of doing it. Again, what I did was I went over here and highlighted my first view controller, and then as soon as I did, it changed over here from second view controller .swift to first view controller .swift. Okay, the first thing to tell you is I want to create a variable that's going to be available on both of the screens. If I create a variable here, right there, it's available on this screen but not on the other one. If I go over to the other screen, or my second view controller .swift, and create one down there, same thing. But in either one of these, and I'm going to do it here, if I create a variable up here, in between the import and the class line, then it's global to the project. It can be used for both projects. That's what I want to do. All right. So I want to create an array, and it will be an array of strings. And because this is a to-do list, I'm going to call it ToDoList. And I'm going to say it's equal to string paren. It looks a little goofy, and we can go over this in just a second after you put that in. Bless you. All right. What this says is ToDoList will be an array, the brackets, it's empty right now, and it'll be an array of strings. And you have to put the paren in after it because it's possible you could want to do some initialization in there. We don't. But it's possible you could want to do some special initialization. So that's the syntax for it. And I got to move it off that line because you can see the blinking cursor. But it's var ToDoList equal bracket string bracket paren. Okay? So that's the first thing out of the way. Now, maybe the easiest question I've asked you in a while. You know, there's a nav bar on here, and there's a table view. If you had to guess which one of those we're going to create an IB outlet for, which one would you guess? I would say the table view. We're not doing anything with the nav bar in this particular example. We just put the nav bar in there so we had a title at the top, and it was nice and centered and whatever. We could have done that with a label too if we wanted to. All right? So I'm going to go and click on here, but again, I like doing it this way, so I'm going to bring this back up. All right, and I'm back on my first scene, so I'm clicking here where it says table view, just to be sure. All right, and then again, I can either click and drag from here, but I like doing it right from here. So I'm going to hold down on the control, down on control rather, down on the touchpad, and I'm going to drag over to here. All right, this will be an outlet. This is a to-do list, right? We've already got a variable called ToDoList, so that could be confusing, trying to have two variables in the same name. So I'm going to call this one ToDoList table. All right, so ToDoList, one word, table. Make sure this one is an outlet. Remember, if you're using something basically as a variable, it's an outlet. If you're using it because you have to write code with it, then it's an action. All right. We're just accepting all the defaults for everything else other than putting in our name and clicking connect. So if you've got that, and make sure that's under your class, this one is local to this. All right. Now, going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the period, okay, we talked about this NS user defaults. So just think about this for just a second. I don't want to draw pictures on the board. I don't really want to point to anything. But what we have to do is we've got that second view controller, the one we just added all the code for. We want to be able to put something in that text field. We want to click the button that says Add Item. Okay? And what we're going to want to have happen is actually 2 or 3 different things. First of all, we're going to want to add that to our array, our to-do list array. All right? And we're going to immediately want to remove what's inside of that text field because we might want to put another item in there. And then the other thing we want to do is we want to copy it over to NS user data. All right? Or user defaults that we just talked about. Okay? But we have to be able to handle that once we've done it. So we're going to put the code in inside of our function that's called ViewDidLoad. We're going to put this in. What I'm going to ask, if you would, please don't type because I'm going to type it. What I'm giving you is correct, but we're going to have to put code around it. But I want to explain to you why, if you type it in the way that I do originally, it's wrong. You won't get an error, but it's wrong. All right, so if you just hold on for a second. So I'm going to go in here, and inside of my ViewDidLoad, because that's where we can do initialization. All right, so I'm going to come in here and say to-do list. Again, please don't type this yet. To-do list equals NS user defaults. All right, so to-do list equals NS user defaults dot standard user defaults. This is kind of ugly. Dot object for key. All right, and then in parentheses we have to say what we're working with. This is very similar to what we just did. All right, so what is it that we're working with? Well, if you remember, we are working with our to-do list. All right, so that's what we're working with, and if you remember, it's as string, an array of strings. All right, so let me move this way over so it all goes on one line, and we'll go back and we'll talk about the whole thing. So let me move this, and then move this way over. All right, and I may have typed something wrong, but we'll fix it in just a second. I just want to get over the logic of what's going on here. All right, what we're saying here is that we're going to be using, and I think I am missing something here, but it's fine. We're going to be using NS user defaults, the standard user defaults. All right, object for key is going to be to-do list, and it's going to be an array of strings. There's nothing wrong at all with doing that, except for one thing. When we first run this to-do list, the first time, what's in it? Not a trick question. Nothing. All right? And the way this is set up right now, there is none of the exclamation points in it. The program will crash. So we could put the exclamation point in there, but the cleaner way of doing it is the way that I'm going to show you right now. And I'm trying to figure out first why I'm getting that. So it's to-do list. No, and let's see if I put the other code around it, if it goes away. All right, because what we basically want to do is almost this exact same thing right here. All right, all this stuff. So I'm going to copy it. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say if. All right, and I'm going to paste that back in. If NS user boom 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 boom, all that stuff. But now for to-do list, I don't want to say as string. I want to say if it's not equal to, what's our key word in here to say if something has got anything in it or not? Nil. All right, so if NS user defaults dot standard user defaults paren dot object for key and then to-do list within double quotes not equal to nil curly brace to-do list equals NS user defaults dot standard user defaults paren dot object for key, then in parentheses to-do list as string. All right, I did not have to in mine, and you might be right, Luke, so let's see. It says, do you want to force a downcast? Okay, so it needed the as there. After the as, it needed, that's where it needed the exclamation point. Now you can put that in. I put comments around it in the actual code that you have. If this is too much for you to type, then don't type it now. Go back and look at the finished product later. All right? I mean, I thought of just making copies of all the code and giving it to you. The problem with doing that is a lot of you are like, oh, I can get this done before he can, and you're not listening to a frigging word I'm saying, but you're typing like crazy. And then, you raise your hand and John comes over there and you're like, yeah, I got a question with this. And he's like, we haven't even gotten there yet. Because I know that's what happens. It's human nature. It's happened before. And sorry, my font is small, but that's the only way I can get all this stuff to show on the screen like this. Now, two quick things before we go on. First thing, three things, I guess. If you look up on the screen here, if I highlight my to-do list app like this, and I come down and I bring up my object library, okay, right like this. First thing is, remember, if I click, I have to go and take my mouse and click in here and drag up here twice, and I have to set up the delegate, and I have to set up the data source. Remember that? We did that the other day when we made the times table. So that's the first thing I want to do, because the program won't work if I don't do it. So I'm going to click in here, hold down on Control and down on my touchpad, drag up to the View controller, let go, and do data source, and then do it again. And this time, choose delegate, or it doesn't matter the order in which you do them. So just do that twice. You can always come back and do it a third time and just check after you've gone and done all that and drag up and let go and make sure they're both got a circle by them. And if they do, you're fine. Again, because we are using the view controller instead of a table view controller. Everybody hear that? We're using a regular view controller with a table view as opposed to a table view controller. That's why we have to do that. All right, another thing we have to do, you may or may not remember this, but if I click over again on here and I move over to here, see, I'm going to click over here and I'm going to move over here. What I want is for my table, I have to set that prototype cell up. Remember that? We have to tell it. So what I did is I clicked over here, and then over here under my attributes inspector, under prototype cells, I have to set that to 1. All right. You can manually do it, or you can click the up spinner there, but there's 1. Then if I click back in here again, it's going to come up and allow me to put in an identifier. Do you remember what we use for an identifier? Cell with a capital C. Don't use a lowercase c. So, cell. All right. I should have thought of doing that before. It just didn't cross my mind. It's 4:22. If somebody would let me know when it gets to be about 4:40, because if we don't finish, that's what we're going to go through till today. All right? And we won't have much to do next time. You have to take my word for it, but we won't. All right, we're going to even add additional functionality into it so that maybe you've seen this before, but what you're going to be able to do, we don't have a mouse, so you're going to have to hold down, I think, on your control key. You're going to be able to take and swipe to the left, and anything that's in your to-do list, whatever's highlighted, when you swipe to the left, it'll bring up a red delete button. And if you click it, it'll remove it from the delete list. And that's a whole total of about 3 lines of code. All right, so we're going to do all that stuff. and make sure that, again, we're already putting in our NS user information. All right. So I've done all that, so I should be able to close my object library again. Oops. All right, and bring this back up if I want to. All right. Again, I'm not that concerned with this right here. I'm more concerned right now with just this and the stuff that's going on in here. All right. Now, so I've got my ViewDidLoad, etc. You should probably get to the point where when you start to add your own code, whether you're overriding functions or whatever, my suggestion is either put it at the bottom or put it at the top. You see what I'm saying? I kind of like to put it at the bottom because the ViewDidLoad is what pretty much happens to begin with anyway. And the did receive memory warning, there are a lot of developers who remove that because it's almost never that you put code in there just because of the fact that just says if you're running out of battery, for lack of better words, or you're running out of power. All right, and it just almost never happens. I should say, you can say, well, yeah, you don't know how I use it, whatever. But what I'm saying is, unless you were, if you were doing an app, you might plan for that. All right, so that if the user, you might be able to check the power or do whatever. But we're not going to be concerned with that stuff. We just don't have the time to get into anything like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my new code down here. Okay, and the first thing I'm going to do is if you look up on the screen, you'll notice there's ViewDidLoad. That's called when the view loads. Makes sense, right? In this app, if I sit there and I bring up the to-do list and I've got the first screen on there and there's nothing on it, so I go to the second screen and I start adding to-do list stuff. Make sense? Eventually I want to go back to the first one. Does that make sense? Because I want to see if it's there. That's not a ViewDidLoad. That's a ViewDidAppear. Load is when you're loading it into memory. But if you've got multiple screens, it's ViewDidAppear. So that's the first thing I'm going to go and I'm going to override is ViewDidAppear. All right, so that's the first thing I'm going to put down there. And again, it's a whole line long after we type in the heading. So override ViewDidAppear, and again, you'll see that the IntelliSense is clicked in. And what do I want to do? I want to say to-do list, but I want the table dot. Does anybody remember how you redraw the table? Reload data. We looked at that last time. Because what we're saying here is every time you switch back from screen 2 to screen 1, redraw the to-do list because I might have added something to it. Probably I did, and that's why I went to screen 2 so I can go back to screen 1. All right, so right here, it's going to be reload data. And the good news is that's it for that particular routine. That's all we got to put in there. Let me hit enter a few times and move this up so that hopefully everybody can see it okay. All right. Any questions on that one? And notice it's a Boolean, so it has to return, basically true or false type of, it has a thing passed to it. That's what I'm saying. What it's going to basically do, for lack of better words, it's going to check and it's going to see whether or not it does need to redraw itself. But by and large, it just does it anyway. Because even if you switch to the screen and didn't add anything and switch back, the system, unless you put in the smarts that checks for that, it doesn't know that. So basically, you're telling it to redraw that table every time you go back from screen 2 to screen 1. That's what this particular routine is doing. All right. Now, there's 3 more functions that we have to write. And the good news is, Luke already knows what 2 of them are because he likes to take his mouse, put it over on the UI text view delegate that's up there, and go and copy that stuff over. Remember when we did that the other day? And if you weren't here, I'll show you exactly what I mean. All right. This will save you some typing. So if you want to, you can move up to the very top of your screen. All right. And what didn't we add here? What's not there that we need? UI table view what? Delegate. Thank you. So we need a comma here. UI table view delegate. I just added this, comma, UI table view delegate. All right? Remember now, if you look up on the screen, if I take and put my mouse over that and hold down on the command, see how the mouse changes? Then if I click my touchpad, it brings up the API for that particular delegate. So it brings up this mess. That's the bad news. The good news is what we need, it's right next to one another on here. All right, remember we had that one thing that was called number of rows in section? So I want to do a Control F when this comes up, or Command F, I'm sorry, Command F, and type in number of rows in section. And I want the second one, not this first one that's in blue. So I want to click the arrow that's here, find the second one. And what I want are these two things right here. I know this doesn't show very well, but I want you to highlight from here to here. All right, you're going to have to remove the comment when you do it. You're going to have to remove the word public. You're going to have to remove the line that says available and the word public here. And if you say that's too much work, fine, then key it in manually. It is less work to do it this way. The IntelliSense should kick in if you start doing it, but it's kind of a pain in the butt to do all that. It's very easy to make a mistake. So I'm highlighting all of that. Hopefully I got all of it. I think I did, looking right here. So I'm going to do a Command C to copy. I'm going to go back again to my code, and right under my view did appear, I'm going to paste it in. So Command V to paste. All right. Now, why am I getting these errors? I don't want the word public here. That's the first thing. Boom. I don't need that comment. That's the second thing. Boom. I don't want where it says available. So this is what it should look like. That's what I want your screen to look like. So either, and I'm going to leave it there for a minute, either copy that stuff over or manually key it in. We still got errors. We're going to fix those. This is a function, and it has to return an int. So we need a curly here, and we're going to tell it to return ToDoList.count. Boom, that one's done. That's all you got to do. The other one is when we're setting up our cell. Remember when we did that the other day? And there's a little bit of typing that has to be done. All right? So for the first one, I'm going to come to the end here, put in my curly, and the whole thing, again, it's one line. Return ToDoList.count. That's the number of rows in the section, correct? What that's saying in English is how many rows are in our table. And what we're saying is go and count how many things are in our array, and that's how many rows you have. And I'm getting that error because in my to-do that D should be capitalized, and I didn't capitalize it. There. So that fixed the first error. For the second one, unfortunately, there's more typing that has to be done. And it's a grand total of 3 lines. 3, that's it. 3 lines. Unfortunately, the first one, you either have to go back to where we just were and copy it over, or there's a lot of typing that you have to do here. All right? All right, so I'm going to come to the end, and again, I'm going to put in my curly. All right, and now in here, here's the 3 lines. Let cell, notice it's lowercase. All right, let cell equal UI table view cell. And again, this is a pain in the butt. Style. And I want to use UI table view style cell style dot default with a reuse identifier of cell in uppercase letter, uppercase C. So right here, UI table view cell style dot default, comma, reuse identifier, cell. All right, 2 more lines, and we're done with this particular function. I'm just going to put them in, then we'll explain them in just a second. So, and that error that I'm getting will be gone now. That's it. So I'll let you put that stuff in, and then we'll go back and look at those line by line. We have 2 more things we have to do. We have to go and add our add item thing in there. Remember on the other viewController.swift file, we've got to add that, and we've got to add our swiping capability. So those are the 2 things that are left. All right, I want everybody to get to the point where you've got all this stuff and you have no red on your screen. That's more important to me than throwing all this stuff down your throat even faster than I am anyway to make sure. All right. So again, I did comment in the copy that I gave you. But let's talk about what we're doing in here. This thing up here that says indexPath.row, that's the current array element. All right. Remember what is happening. Play computer, okay? Please play computer for a second. I hate drawing on the board, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So here's ViewController 1. So we've got a thing here that says ToDoList app, and here this whole thing is our table view. So these are our different rows in our table. Everybody cool with that? Everybody get that? Seriously, everybody understand that? We got a button down here, or a thing that says first, and another one over here that says second, type of an idea. All right. Then you've got your second one over here. So that's your ViewController 2. This has got our label that says add a to-do list item. And then it's got over here, it's got the particular text field. And here it's got a button that says add item. All right. So I come in there, and right there, into that text field, I type in buy groceries. All right. So I type that in there. And after I type in buy groceries, I click the add item button. What has to happen then is add grocery or buy groceries has to be added to the array of strings we have that's called ToDoList. All right? Then what's happening in here is we're telling it to find that particular entry and copy that in to the particular table cell element. So if I already have, let's say that I typed in buy groceries, boom, and I click add item. That's going to put that here. So I type in, so it brings in right here, buy groceries. All right? And then it clears. So I type in another one. All right? And it says pick up kids. So I put in that second one, and I click add item. Now it's going to put in pick up kids right here. And again, that indexPath.row is always, this thing right here is keeping in line with the actual array itself. It's the way that the cells are going through it, but it's kept in jive and unison, whatever you want to say. So 0 in the cell is 0 in the array. All right, that's what we're doing. We're programming it so it does that. All right. So hopefully by saying that you had enough time to get all that in. That's not going anywhere. I'm just going to drag. I'm going to go down a little bit so this moves up a little. So hopefully everybody has what's up here. All right. So this is going to move up to the top in just a second. All right. So what we have left in this particular file is, again, our ability to swipe. Okay? And, you know, it's basically, again, it's the idea we want to be able to take our finger, swipe on our to-do list swipe, an item on it, and have a red button come up that says delete. All right, when we click the delete item, think about what has to happen. We have to remove it from the array. We have to remove it from the table. We have to remove it from NS user defaults. You see how you got three things that have to be constantly kept in unison with one another? All right, so it's our responsibility as programmers to do that. Yes?
The MS user default, does that store them continuously until like a user
It literally will store it forever unless you remove it. All right, that's why when we're doing this stuff and we do this, we're not going to just remove it, we're going to also remove it from NS user defaults. Because if we didn't do that, it would be in there forever. All right, I don't know enough about the innards of a Mac that if you were constantly storing stuff forever, I suppose it would have a, it would eventually catch up to you. All right. When you work with this, the thing is called commit editing style. All right. So, Luke, if I come back in here where we just were, in here, and I do another, whoops, no, I don't want to join the staff wireless. Thank you. Thank you anyway. All right, but if I come back in here with this and do another Command F, and it says number of rows in section, and if I change that to commit editing style, there it finds it. See that? That's the one that I want. I believe that's the only one there is. So I'm going to grab, not the public, but from the word func on over to the end of the following line. Command C to copy, go back to my file. Oops, that was right to begin with. And paste it in. All right? But again, I'm going to get an error because, why? It's a function. So that's either you have to type that in, or you have to go and copy it in like I just showed you. You shouldn't have to change anything that's in there. Once we get it in there, we have to put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. And one line is just a curly. All right? Think about what we have to do. We have to put an if statement in there that says if it's a delete. And if it is, we want to remove it from the array. We want to remove it from the table view, and we want to remove it from NS user data. That's the 3 lines we have to put in there. All right? So hopefully everybody got that and got that okay. Again, if you didn't, you do have it on the copy that I gave you. All right, so if editing style equals UI table view cell editing style. I don't know why they made these things. One of the things that their claim is that you can read this stuff and it's totally self-documenting, which may be true if it doesn't put you to sleep first. All right, the good, when you talked about the IntelliSense, you have to have that, or you have to be a really good typist, because I can't tell you the number of times I've screwed up because I capitalized something I shouldn't, or didn't capitalize something I should. All right, so if it's a delete, the first thing we want to do here is ToDoList .remove at index. And what's really nice here, what we don't know where it is. What is it? It's index path .row. The system is figuring that out for us. That's nice. All right. Oh, where it says if editing style equals that should be equal. I apologize. That's why I got the error. All right. Next, we have to remove it from NS user defaults. Oops. That's the second of 3 lines. And after we do that, hopefully you remember this again because we talked about it before. How do we update our table? We say the name of our table, to-do list table, what? Anybody? Dot? Reload data. Paren. To my knowledge, I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, we have completed everything that there is for view controller, the first view controller.swift file. All right? And I know it's got to be 440, it's 444. So next time, we will add the last bit of code in there for the add item. Because if you run it now, it's not going to do much because we don't have the code in yet to add the item. We should have done that in hindsight. We should have done that earlier. All right? And that is a grand total of 3 lines. All right? And I'll tell you what, I'll put it in there. But if you want to take off, that's fine. But I will go back to View Controller 2. So I'm going to go back to that one. Right here, and in that add item, I'm going to put in those 3 lines just so you see what they are. All right? To-do list dot append. Remember, that's how you put stuff into an array. Item.text. That's the first line. Second line is we want to clear out the item.text. So item.text equals double quote, double quote. All right. And then finally, we've got another one of these NS user defaults. Dot standard user defaults. Dot set object. Then inside of the parentheses, to-do list for key, double quote, to-do list. All right, and it's giving me an error right here. Let me see if I can figure out why. Did I mean to use it? Yeah. Okay. The item.text, remember it could be empty, so you need the exclamation point there. That should be everything. You should be able to save it then. You should be able to go in and run it if you want to. And you don't have to. Again, we'll do this first thing next time. I'm going to go over that code in more detail next time. But you should be able to run it then, and it should be a working to-do list. Not only that, if you save stuff into it and you stop your run of the simulator and you start it up again tomorrow or next class in the simulator, whatever you had in your to-do list should still be there. Questions? There's a lot to throw at you in a class, but I figured that this would be a good project. It's something that you might actually find usable. Yes.
Do they use pointers with Swift still?
There are pointers used. They're just behind the scenes.
Okay, I noticed in that sheet you gave us when it said NS user default, it had the little asterisk right by it.
Well, what you have to remember is anything that says NS was done for Objective-C.
Right.
And Objective-C is totally pointers. Every line almost of code you have has got pointers in it. So what happened was they decided to try to throw a lot of the hard stuff out of it in Swift, but you still have to make a lot of library calls.
Yeah.
All right, so you'll still see that occasionally yet in there when you look at the documentation. All right. Again, if you get done with it and run it and it breaks or whatever, you do have the working copy that I gave you earlier today. All right.
I'm gonna go search Google Play for Redmond.
It ain't there yet. It will be. I paid my $25.
It's trending.
Yeah.
It's a worldwide Twitter trending topic.
I just gotta be able to put a high score on there and give it some value or purpose. Oh yeah. Alright, see you guys tomorrow.
Good night. Try to leave this up there for 5 minutes and see if it works, so I can at least see if mine does appear to work correctly or not. I'm going to get started. We're going to go over. Good night. Lovely.
Good night.
Good night.
Who's got a chat?